On the 20th of June each year for 250 years, a Spanish galleon sailed from Manila in the Philippines. It was loaded with jewels, silk, ivory, jade, and porcelain. The city stopped and celebrated as the ship left. It was bound for Mexico. It would eventually bring back silver, which the merchants of the Far East called silk money, to pay for the goods of the exotic East. The galleon took 3 months to make the trip. It headed for Lower California and then sailed down the coast of Mexico. During the 16th century, the Spanish considered the Pacific to be their own private ocean. Spanish colonies spread from Mexico down the coast of Ecuador, Peru, and Chile as far south as Valparaiso. For 65 years, the Spanish had been mining and looting the treasure of the ancient Aztec and Inca civilizations. The Spanish assumed that no other European country would dare to trespass in the Pacific. They were so complacent, they didn't even bother to arm the merchant ships which sailed up and down these coasts, carrying booty and treasure. In 1573, while he was planning to attack the mules that carried treasure from Panama City to the Atlantic, Drake had had a heady vision. The story was recorded by Richard Hakluyt, who was a secret agent for Queen Elizabeth I.
Francis Drake, the cook John Oxenham, and the student Thomas Cavendish were the 3 British seamen who dreamed of conquering the Pacific. Of these, the most celebrated is Francis Drake, and for a worthy reason. Drake was a dreamer, but a very practical one. After he had seen the Pacific in 1573, he determined to sail it. His agents bought charts in all the ports of Europe. The only hope of savaging Spain would be to be well set with all manner of rutters, elevation, cartes, maps, and charts. Drake would know where to wound Spain in the plump Pacific.
Drake put his plan to Queen Elizabeth.
The last time I let you leave, Drake, I nearly had to marry the King of Spain to prevent war. Do you want me to have to marry the King of Spain?
Your Majesty.
The risks are very great.
So are the rewards.
Just your dream, Drake.
It took Drake 3 years to get her permission for the expedition.
You must keep your mission secret. Spain has many spies.
What will I tell my men?
Tell them you're going to Africa. Africa is very large.
It was not easy to recruit men without telling them where they were going. As they sailed out of Plymouth, the crew were curious. By the time they reached the Canary Islands, they were anxious. Then, at Cape Verde, Drake took prisoner a Portuguese pilot called Nino da Silva.
You have every freedom on this ship, except the freedom to leave, of course.
The crew began to suspect they were headed for South America. Many resented not being taken into their captain's confidence. The crossing was slow. The doldrums lived up to their name. No wind blew. There were not enough rations, and arguments about whether they were being shared out fairly. Drake feared a mutiny.
Every man here is precious. He cannot be replaced for £10,000. There will be no more dissensions between sailors and gentlemen. You will all work together in harmony. The gentlemen must haul and draw with the mariners. Let us prove we are united. You want to know where you're going? Here is my commission from the Queen. I'm taking you to the treasure store of the world, the Pacific.
But no one sailed through the strait since Magellan. We'll die.
We'll be the first. Any who want to go home can have a ship and provisions. Though I'm not sure they can have my blessing.
The Pacific was a frightening, fabled ocean. Sailors believed it held unknown continents. Sea snakes and sea monsters lurked in its waters, satans of the deep, that could swallow ships and drive sailors mad. The Spanish fed that fear. They whispered that in the Straits of Magellan, ships could only travel east to west. There was no way back from the Pacific to the harbors of home. Drake had an easy passage through the straits. But then, a howling northeast gale fell on them. Many sailors believed it was the worst sea that ever hit them. One ship was lost, the second ship became separated. Drake waited for it at a rendezvous point off southern Chile, but it never came. He was now on his own. He renamed his ship the Golden Hind.
The coast should be here. The charts are wrong. More Spanish tricks. I've been sold forgeries. Helm!
Drake eventually found the coast of Chile. The Spanish should have been prepared for him.
The King of Spain had spies and torturers in every port in Europe and the Caribbean. Drake feared he had been betrayed.
For 2 years, the Inquisition had been questioning a man called John Oxenham, who had sailed with Drake to Panama in 1573.
We must return to the ships as soon as we can. As soon as we can.
Oxenham had tried to conquer Panama himself, but then the Spaniards captured him.
What were his dreams, Oxenham? What were his dreams, Oxenham?
One man can't know another man's dreams.
One man can guess another man's dreams.
He dreamed of sailing the Pacific. He knows what I achieved. Francis won't rest till he's outdone me.
What did you achieve? Except your own agony.
Despite Oxenham's warnings, the Spaniards took few precautions against any raids. The city of Panama, for example, had far more monasteries and nunneries than forts. Drake found little resistance as he sailed north from Valparaiso, seizing one ship after another. At times, the Spanish were almost comically unprepared. They did not even notice they had been robbed. It was only as Drake neared Lima in Peru that the Spanish began to organize their defenses properly. The Viceroy of Peru sent out armed galleons to intercept the heretic pirate. At dawn on March the 1st, 1579, Drake spotted a ship called the Cacafuego. The Golden Hind was faster than any Spanish ship. So, to lull any suspicion and to slow his ship down, Drake dropped large water jars over the side. The Cacafuego thought the Golden Hind was Spanish and approached. As the two ships came close, Drake revealed who he was. A single shot brought down the mainmast. The Cacafuego had no choice but to surrender. Drake knew he did not have much time. The Viceroy of Peru would soon send out the best fleet he had to search for him.
A Spanish captain would kill you. I hate papists, but as I try to master the sea, so I try to master my hatred. I want their gold, not their skins.
And you want the fame, Francis. The pirate with mercy.
I am not a pirate. I serve my queen doing my country's business. Don't ever call me a pirate.
The Golden Hind was so heavy that Drake had to offload the less valuable silver at an island called La Plata. Drake then landed at the Cocos Islands and sailed on to Drake's Bay, near what is now San Francisco. Here, to the amazement of the local Indians, Drake planted a flag and took possession of the land for Queen Elizabeth. Drake returned to England across the Pacific and Indian Oceans. He was now a national hero. Elizabeth had to knight him, even though it would provoke the King of Spain. The Queen was cautious as ever. Tradition claims she knighted Drake. In fact, she would not hold the sword herself, but handed it to one of her lords, who dubbed Drake Sir Francis. The dream of imitating Drake was born in the mind of a young student at Cambridge. Cavendish was only 21 years old. After studying at Corpus Christi College in Cambridge, he made one voyage to America. When he came back, he sold his estate in Suffolk and fitted out two small ships, the Desire and the Content. He set out for the Straits of Magellan. After 6 months at sea, they reached the Straits and the fort the Spanish had built at this now desolate spot.
Out of 400 men and 30 women, only 24 remained alive. The fort was attacked by Indians. All the seeds they had planted did not grow. I called the place Port Famine.
Like Drake, Cavendish attacked Spanish ports and vessels, but he was much more ruthless. He burnt warehouses and orchards merely for pleasure. Cavendish had a simple plan: to intercept a Manila galleon. It was vital for him to keep the element of surprise. But the Spanish had improved their defenses. They now used couriers to send warnings up and down the coast to their garrisons.
To the Viceroy of Peru, It is imperative that our Majesty is not insulted by another heretic corsair like Drake.
One day, Cavendish saw a man he suspected was a courier.
Get him!
Where are you going?
Where are you going? Navies!
Cavendish found letters and instructions. The information allowed him to plot a new course that would avoid Spanish troops. Cavendish made for Cape San Lucas at the southern end of Lower California, the point the Manila galleons headed for to touch land. On November the 4th, 1587, the Desire and the Content were sailing up and down off the headland. The lookout spied a sail. The ship was the 700-ton Santa Ana. The Bishop of the Philippines claimed the Santa Ana was the richest ship ever to leave Manila. That day, Cavendish was inspired. He got the Desire in close to the Santa Ana and ready to make the first assault.
We saw the Spanish admiral had made shot-proof screens fore and aft. They were armed with lances, javelins and rapiers, as well as great stones which they threw at our heads. 2 of our men were injured, and 1 was killed. But I trimmed the sails and we raked them through with cannon fire and muskets.
The English won against great odds.
Aboard was gold coins, silks and satins, brocades, ivory, jade, lacquer, porcelain, the fabled treasures of the fabled East.
Cavendish sailed the galleon to Porto Seguro, where he would not be spotted from the sea. Methodically, he set about looting the ship. November the 17th was the anniversary of Queen Elizabeth's coronation. The exuberant pirates fired off salutes. For once, Cavendish was careful how he behaved.
Taking hostages to ensure our security, I gave the Spanish chickpeas and wine for nourishment and arms to defend themselves.
Contra Barbarossa, Actonis utilitaris. Sed non contra Angles. Gratis.
I left them with sails and gave the captain a handsome present of jewels. Then I burned the ship.
The looting of the Santa Ana made Cavendish a rich man. He and his crew sailed across the Pacific and back to England. When they arrived, they were dressed like Chinese lords in silks and satins. Queen Elizabeth knighted him. In 1591, Cavendish decided to return to the Pacific. Over 5 years, he had changed. He had become stranger, more cruel. When he landed in South America, he tortured Indians for no purpose. Cavendish was lost at sea. Whether he was killed by the Spaniards, by the Indians, or by his own crew who could no longer stomach his cruelties, we shall never know now. After the attacks of Drake and Cavendish, the Spaniards armed all their vessels in the Pacific. By 1670, however, the buccaneers were threatening Spanish interests in the Caribbean. It was not long before they also turned their attention to Panama and the Pacific. William Dampier was born in southwest England. As a youth, he sailed to Newfoundland, where he had the perfect education for a pirate. He became a ship's apprentice and was shipwrecked in the West Indies. Excellent qualifications.
And there some buccaneers rescued me and invited me to join their company.
For the next 8 years, Dampier was a buccaneer. He helped sack Portobello in Panama. His group decided, in the democratic way of the buccaneers, to tramp across the country to the Pacific coast. To their complete surprise, they were able to seize 5 Spanish ships. They decided to cruise down the Pacific. A little looting, a little exploration. Dampier and his comrades sailed down to the island of Juan Fernandez. Here, Dampier had an experience which proves that history can repeat itself.
There, I found a native Indian who had quarreled with his shipmates and been abandoned on the island.
15 years later, Dampier would return to this island.
It was to Juan Fernandez I returned, and there I rescued Alexander Selkirk, who inspired Daniel Defoe to write Robinson Crusoe.
Dampier kept notes strictly for publication. But what made Dampier famous was less his stirring tales of raids and adventures, and more his meticulous observations of the people, animals and plants he had encountered during the voyages.
Some of the islands of the Pacific had the strangest species of birds, insects and butterflies, a true bestiary. As much a philosopher as a pirate, I had to ask if God had willed me to piracy in order to uncover the most curious creatures in his creation.
Dampier's book, A New Voyage Across the World, impressed the public and the British government. He was summoned to see the Lords of the Admiralty.
The Lords of the Admiralty require and commission William Dampier to sail to the Pacific and there to attempt to establish the nature of tides, winds, currents, flora, fauna, and opportunities for commerce for Her Majesty's ships.
Dampier had no experience of commanding a conventional ship, and there were many quarrels. His crew was shipwrecked on Ascension Island, and it took 5 years for them to get back to Britain.
Ignorant critics, who are no scientists, censure this last voyage a catastrophe, but I returned with a greater knowledge of the tides, the species, and the islands of the far-flung ocean than any mariner before. Drake and Morgan were greater thieves, but I was the only pirate who was as familiar with Plato as with pistols.
The threat of pirates in the Pacific continued well into the 19th century. The government of Chile built this fort, which overlooks the Straits of Magellan, in 1843, partly to control the local Indians, and partly to make sure that no latter-day Drake could ever take them by surprise.